Chris, Jamie, Michael, and Chris here for another episode of the Entrepreneurial Family Man, a marriage-centered home.
Chris and Chris.
Chris and Chris. The McCluskey mentor moment is no longer today. Okay.
Isn't one of your kids going to be in the Olympics because you guys are moving to near a training facility so that they can have 24-hour lessons?
Hey, I want all 4 kids of ours every season to have a sport so that we have no life.
If my kids don't get everything they want, then I'm a horrible parent.
In the context of what we're talking about today in particular, of this marriage-centered home, I mean, we're all still kind of figuring that out and leaning into that each week, right? That's just we just kind of want to have a fun conversation about how has this worked for us? What are we struggling with? Remember, we're just guys that adore our wives, are crazy about our kids, and want to do well in business. We're not going to sacrifice those that we love on the altar of our self-ambition. I don't know about you guys, but there are plenty of friends that we have that just busy themselves because they don't have the focus together as a couple. And so they just busy themselves and fill their schedule with stuff. And they're like playing taxi cab tag together. Get the kid from here to there. Get this guy from over there. And there's no real great intimacy in the marriage and focus on who they should be as a couple and them leading their family.
It's been a huge shift culturally. I'll just say that sitting back and observing, I heard a speaker at one point comment that we, as parents, are so busy trying to give our kids whatever we perceive that we didn't have, that we're not giving them what we did have. And for many of us, what we had was more of a sense of being family, more of a sense of there being time, being the opportunity to connect. And anymore, they're shuttled around so much. Everything seems to center around whatever the kids are involved in now. And any sense of us as family, and particularly for the husband and wife as us as couple, gets really set to the side, if not just tossed down some dark alley.
Yeah, I'm trying to even put myself in that position as a kid, watching parents who are paying no attention to the vision for their individual lives as a couple and where they're going and following the vision that God has for them. What are they watching? I mean, what are they seeing? As you're a kid watching parents shuttle kids around and do everything for the kids and not their marriage, it's almost like you're getting training on how to live as an adult in a terrible way.
All the kids really want to do is be together and have a happy family. They don't need large closets and TVs in every room. McGreevy's, you guys had that little house. You guys had, it was just so much fun to be like all crammed in and doing all this stuff together.
Oh man, back at my parents' house, there were 4 of us in one bedroom. And we loved it. We used to jump from bed to bed, and we all were so tight, and we still are today. And I think it's a large part of us because we were so close growing up.
Yeah.
Alicia and I have talked about that. Like the whole, right, the American dream is like you get your house and the white picket fence, and you keep on getting bigger and bigger, and your McMansions, and every kid should have their ensuite. I don't care how much we have. We want our kids to be roommates together, to learn to live and function together. And that's part of growing up. I love your story on that, Michael, because it's true. You guys are still close today. And I didn't even know about you, that you had 4 of you in a room together. So that's helps us out.
It sounds kind of crazy too. I mean, on one of our recent episodes here, I shared about Rachel and I having moved from our beautiful home in Florida to this little country road that we live on now. And we lived in a trailer, a single wide mobile home trailer with 4 kids. We had just had our 4th child at that point. That sounds pretty crazy. And yeah, there is a place for a few extra bedrooms. That's a nice thing to have in life. But my kids will tell you now, living in the home, of course, that we eventually built on the property and very spacious, lots of room to move around, that some of their happiest memories are being all packed into that little sardine can of a single wide trailer, because we spent so much time just together. And for that matter, if we weren't together in the house because it was so small, we were together outside. We were hiking. We were exploring. We got four-wheelers and we were four-wheeling. We bought horses and we went horseback riding. And people would look at some of that and think, man, why don't you just get the house built? What are you doing with all this other? Wait to buy a horse. Wait to buy these other things. No, the most important thing is capturing what's right now, and that's relationship. That's family. And we'll keep moving toward those other things. Those were some of their richest years of childhood with very little space, but a very strong experience of us.
Yeah, that's an awesome example. I love having a horse and living in a trailer. That's amazing.
It should be like a bunch of iPads in every room.
Yeah, right. Separately enjoying their Facebook feeds from separate rooms. Yeah, that's rough. Sometimes I feel like in today's society, it's more culturally acceptable to be led by your kids in a lot of ways. I almost think of the analogy of when you walk a dog. I mean, the dog is out in front of you, right? And you follow it around and pick up its poop and then keep walking until it gets its fill and then you take it back. I mean, in some ways, that's what happens in American families today. And it's really, I think sometimes fathers get their affirmation from how they're doing with their kids. And man, what if your kid has a bad day? Or what if they're struggling with someone? Then you're automatically a bad father? Man, we as dads, like I found that we have to find that affirmation from our Heavenly Father so we can bring it to our kids and not be led by them, but lead them out of the strength that the Father gives us.
Yeah, they don't need just a friend to be on their level. They need a leader sometimes. Wasn't it Carl Jung or one of the early American psychologists that said the worst thing for children that's most damaging is when their parents aren't living out their dreams? It's that example of taking risk and mom and dad going after the gold in their heart of what God has put in there that is going to move the next generation towards taking these risks and having a unique vision. I'm going to be kind of bold here. This is the time for McGreevy's like Michael and Lydia to decide and have God tell them where they're supposed to go and how he's supposed to use them. And yes, they want to respect their children and listen to them and have empathy if the kids are upset. But this is not an equal democracy where the children go along and hear from the Holy Spirit and then tell the parents what they're going to do. And we're like afraid of them if they don't, because their voice isn't being heard.
It brings up another topic of you have to be on the same page with your wife in seeking out that vision. You can't lead your kids unless you're going to God and being led by him and finding that vision from him. Because what are you going to tell your kids to do if you're not doing that together? How are you going to lead your kids?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of to that first point of, are you sacrificing your own dreams for, the perceived benefit of your kids and the safety, right? And so we moved up here to Oregon 9 years ago, have enjoyed our time here. It was a great season and chapter of our lives to start a family in a smaller town and great church community and all this stuff, right? But you have to listen to your wife. And over the years, she is not a winter person at all, one bit. And it's just grinded on us. And I don't love it either, but I tolerate it. And so we've just decided the past couple of years, like we need to really lean into what's God have for us next. And we just really recently decided, you know what, we spent our formative years from 18 to 30 or so at the coast. We're just beach people. That's just part of, I think, who God created us during those times. And so we've gone back and forth and have had the opportunity to travel, here and there. And so we're actually moving to Florida soon and just owning the fact that we like warm weather. I am more comfortable and she is more comfortable in flip-flops and board shorts than...
I'm going to crush you in shuffleboard when I come down to visit. I got my white shoes and I'm going to put on a guayaba.
It's not all shuffleboard and white shorts down there.
All you see is knuckles and Cadillacs, right?
But it was this thing of like, and we hear this from friends, even here now in Oregon. We're like, this is a nice, safe place to live. And 15 years from now, when our kids are out of the house, we'll go buy the place in Florida or in California or whatever, and we'll have the beach at that time. But why wait? And I think, Jamie, you said it earlier. Kids are taking their cues on dreams and living out those dreams and taking risks from us. And when we sat down with our kids and told them about this and just explained, like, this is what mommy and daddy have kind of been feeling from the Lord, and we've prayed about this many, many times together, they heard that. They heard the stories of like mommy and daddy on our knees, literally praying about this. And for them to hear that, I think was powerful. And then they're just excited. I mean, they've never found a beach they didn't like, so this is going to be probably easy, right? But we don't get this right all the time, of course, but we're just trying to like try things out and pursue more of our dreams and bring the kids along. And like you guys said, it's you have to have that biblical hierarchy, right? The parents have to lead.
Wow, Chris, I can tell somebody's saying right now after listening to this, how could you do that to your kids? What about their friends? What about all the things that they're comfortable with? Like, you animal. How could you do that?
Hey, we've had those conversations with friends here in Oregon.
Well, you're right, Niemeyer. You're right about how the kids will take from you and Alicia the visioning that you've done, and the dreaming and the praying, as long as you as parents are providing it. And that's the beauty for me of what you've just shared there, is that you, the two of you together, husband and wife, spending time just as husband and wife, talking and praying and having these long date night conversations. Then you together as a unit have come to the kids that are entrusted to you. They're not the dogs out in front walking you. You are coming to them and saying, this is where we as a family sense the next season of our lives could be. And here's why. And we'd like to talk with you about that and hear your thoughts on it. And we want to be all eventually on the same page about that. The couple have come together and then are disseminating basically to the rest of the kids, instead of just taking our cues from the kids, because the kids are taking their cues not from us, from the culture, from television. I want to be like so-and-so. Why can't we do this? And the kids start dictating things, and the parents just kind of jump around trying to react to all of that. That's the huge shift that I hear in what we're really talking about here. And where do the cues initially come from? Is it from the kids, or is it from mom and dad?
You know, and the funny thing is we made this list, right, and I think every couple should do this in terms of your values together, your interests, and just daily activities, you know, in whatever zip code you choose. And we also had another column of things that were like holding us back here. They were almost every single one of them kid-centric. It was, well, they're plugged into this program of ballet, or they know the soccer program really well, or the school support here is good. Guess what, guys? There are those in every single zip code, and kids are resilient and they love to make new friends. You know, we just had to kind of learn, like, let's just explore and do this thing. Chris, I've heard bits of your story, and you know, we're actually heading very closely to where you ended up in Florida and where you left Florida years ago, but you had a thriving practice. But I also heard stories and saw pictures of you coming home to a wife and kids asleep at times because you were working late, and you made this massive shift years ago. I mean, what was that like? And what was that conversation like with Rachel sitting down and saying, hey, we need to make a massive change here?
It was so much like what you guys are talking about here, the importance of first the husband and wife getting together, because you're right. We lived for almost 10 years in Clearwater, Florida, but we didn't even grow up in Florida. We moved there from Ohio. We were actually living in Kentucky, and my brother and his wife were living in Indiana, and my sister and her husband were living in Ohio, and my parents were living in Toronto, Canada. So we were close enough that family could see each other maybe once a year, maybe even twice a year, you know, for a short visit. But we were all of us siblings were married. Nobody had kids yet. And we spent a lot of time talking with our respective spouses about, well, what's our vision for where you'd like to grow up and how you would like your kids to experience extended family, not just our family, but extended family. So even the move, Chris, to Florida for us was the result of a lot of husband-wife conversations, prayers, and vision casting. Then all of us eventually, as an extended family, we met at my folks' house one Christmas and just talked about all this stuff for a week as we sat around the fire in mom and dad's place. And we said, you know, let's just be open to moving wherever it looks like we could embrace that kind of vision for family. So that was when Florida became the place. Eventually, all of my extended family moved within 20 minutes of each other down in the Clearwater, Florida area. We figured that was it. Okay, game over. It's done. This is where we're going to stay. No. Because why? Because husbands and wives kept talking and visioning. So yeah, I mean, the next.
I thought it was going to be your shuffleboard game got hill, but
they'd crush us.
No, the next chapter is that we're up here, moving to the country. Then same story. Yeah.
McCluskey, what would that have looked differently if you were thinking about just your kids having opportunities? If you guys your vision was more just about raising your kids and about you.
Well, that what we're talking about here today is countercultural, right? This is not the way our culture normally thinks. We are a very child-centric culture, which is bizarre if you think about it, because the result of focusing our marriages on our kids is that our marriages oftentimes don't make it. And we are a culture now that sees marriages breaking apart left and right. And so kids, where the focus was supposed to be, wind up having to be traded back and forth and back. I know a lot of our listeners are in exactly the same situation, where the kids have got ours and hers and theirs kind of a situation bouncing around. That's rough, but it's a lot of the fruit of the focus being not first and foremost on the marriage, instead being on the children. And when it is the dog walking you. It is everything backwards. So yeah, I think this topic that we're discussing about paying our primary attention first and foremost to where are the husband and wife together as a team, and then are they communicating that to the kids and helping the family to catch a vision. It's a critical pivot point, but it is no question very countercultural.
So, Michael, I want to turn to you here around the campfire and
come on,
talk a little bit about this. So you and Lydia are growing your team literally here, and 6 weeks into kid number 3, and you're in your hometown, and Lydia's not. And so, what is it looking like as you're having this conversation and pursuing your dreams and exploring what do you have as a couple together?
Yeah, this has not been an easy process for us, because what we've found is we have a similar vision for how we want to live out our lives, but there's also a lot of differences there too. There's a lot of different perspectives that we bring to the table. And we're at the place now where there's a few things that are very clear. That we want an environment where our kids are going to thrive. And we literally sat down with a blank map of the United States and just started with our list of things that we wanted. We started crossing off states and cities because we came up with this long list of what we wanted to have. And as we crossed things out, we ended up just with a handful of options. And we've been kind of exploring those options for the last couple of years. Actually, this is a long process for us. And we're not completely there yet. We're like 90% there. But this has been like a tough process. And I'm in the position now where I live with my family. Like, my extended family is right around me. I have 2 sisters that live within a couple blocks of me. They have kids as well. Our kids play together all the time. But we have some bigger, deeper visions for our lives that are taking us away from this place. And that's been pretty difficult. But I know that it's been hard, but I've felt compelled to hold up the vision that me and my wife have as over the top of all the other factors that come into play.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Michael.
Well, I feel like I was being a little bit vague, because it is a little bit vague.
It's raw. Yeah. You're still in that period of figuring things out. Frankly, just like I am. I'm going to be homeless here in about 3 weeks, actually. So, but I love that you and Lydia are leaning into that together, just like we've been talking about. You are seeking the Lord together for your family, for your lives. And it's not, I think one thing we talked about is, if you don't do that, then the default, if you're not focused together on the same page, the default becomes your kids are the center. What are the kids' needs? Well, the kids have plenty of cousins around and grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, so that's good enough. We'll just do that for the next 15, 20 years and grind it out here.
I want to share something real quick. We're in a mastermind group with this dear friend of ours, Roger Whitney, but he's always saying that the best relationships don't usually have like big knockout dragouts. It's like a lot of little conversations where people are getting on the same page and knowing what each other thinks. And I mean, we talked before about dating your spouses, and I just remember it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago that me and Ruthie really started dating each other. We talked about this on a previous episode, that our kids get to watch mommy and daddy getting dressed up and go and spending time with each other. And I know, Michael, that you and Lydia have those coffee dates and those little conversations of dreaming when we take our spouse and we remove ourselves from our environment. So many amazing things happen at that. And I think the tendency is to like make excuses. We need to like have our kids watch us creating those little conversations over and over and over and over again. It wasn't like, oh, let's sit around the table tonight and have a 5-hour knockout, drag out, pull out the vision board and like decide that we're moving to Alaska to start an orphanage. That's not the way to do it. Chris McCluskey, I'm wondering, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, this is just an every week kind of a thing. It's as much of a daily thing as you can possibly make it, the communication that you have just with your spouse. When the kids are down, before you're totally shot, the two of you still, while your brains are intact, can communicate just as that husband and wife who fell crazy in love with each other and got this whole thing started anyway. You have that kind of connection, but at least once a week. That's only 4 times a month. At least once a week, it's just the two of you. You do not have to go to a fancy restaurant. You don't even have to necessarily go out. You certainly don't have to spend a lot of money, but it needs to be just the two of you. And I would suggest not the two of you in your most casual, dragged down, exhausted looking self. Rachel and I have made a practice we're married now 34 years, of having date night, and we dress to the nines for our dates. We really make ourselves look our best, like we did back when we were, trying to attract each other and see if we could maybe get to the altar, right? And I'll tell you a quick story here of recalling a time. This is back when we were in the trailer. I can see Gracie, and she was probably 4 or so in my mind's eye. Rachel had one of those days where just everything went wrong, and she's trying to get herself ready with, a baby crying, probably needing attention over here. And she said she's looking at herself in the mirror, trying to blow dry her hair, and she's got her outfit on, and she's got she's just finishing up the last touches basically to get ready to go on our date. And she was asking herself, is this worth it? I mean, really, this is a lot of work. Is this worth it? And she said out of her peripheral vision, she caught a glimpse of Gracie standing in the doorway, watching her get dressed. I mean, she was all in her outfit. She had her little, dangly earrings and her makeup and everything, but she's just finishing up. She turned toward Gracie, and Gracie, unprompted, simply said, "Mommy, you look so pretty. It made my teeth drop."
Oh, wow.
And instantly, Rachel said, "No, of course it's worth it. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for us, and that blesses them." So, I mean, I love that she looks her best. She loves that I make myself look my best. But the kids are taking their cues from mom and dad, even when we don't even know it, when we're not speaking, but our lives, our marriage is speaking to them all the time.
Oh, that is so good. And I'm actually envisioning you, Chris, in a tux, riding up on your horse to the trailer to rescue you.
That's right. The knight in shining armor comes to the trailer. I love that.
It's amazing.
Well, guys, I don't even know the questions to ask myself some of these times, but what is it that you would say, if I could ask myself 5 years ago, am I working toward a marriage-centric home, a kid-centric home? Like, what are those conversations that we could have? What's an action step that someone could take from this conversation with their spouse?
It's less of a question, but I would implore anybody to jerk the wheel, to do like a 180. Like, if you're going down this path, like you loved your wife when you first met and you had these aspirations, and now you find yourself into this busy routine, that it's not too late. Like, that's me and that's Ruthie and my story, that we were at the spot where we just didn't want to settle for mediocrity. And so we kind of jerked the wheel. We just decided, like, we are going to date each other. And those first meetings were awkward, more for me than Ruthie. but I was leaning into something that I had ignored and I had gone passive as a man. Real men, like we need to be more that aggressiveness in a good way of saying, like, if you like schedule the day, like go do something. And you don't need to make sparks fly the first several times you go out if you haven't done this for a while, but it's worth it. Serve your wife and communicate with your wife and put her the center for your children. Like that. That's one thing that I think we need to add here. If you want your kids to have amazing futures, then just what Chris McCluskey said, they're watching us. And so we can do this for them. They don't need a whole bunch of fancy things. They need a mom and a dad that get along.
Yeah. If you want your kids to have amazing futures, have an amazing presence in front of you or in front of them. Be amazing in your marriage where you are. It might be good to ask yourself, like, what do your actions say about what your home is like? Do they say that there's more attention on your kids and their needs? Or does it say undoubtedly that your focus is first on your marriage?
Yeah. Maybe another question would be, what needs to happen over time in order for us to move the flow from a child-centered home to a marriage-centered home? Like these activities that you're all in doing, several of them have an end date. You don't need to just keep them going and re-up on all the lessons, all the other stuff. You can say, no, we're going to have family night and put the kids together and just be with each other as a family. We had tension that was a little bit hard. So I just don't ignore the fact that if you haven't done this for a while, it's going to take a little bit of work to get back that connection that you had with your spouse before the kids were there.
Jamie, good for you, man, because you used a phrase just a moment ago. You said you got to kind of be aggressive as a husband in a good way. The word probably is assertive, because that's really what you're describing. You took the initiative. You were assertive there. We men, when we want to fix something, sometimes we do come in aggressive, and that's not generally a big hit. That's not generally a big hit when we come in being aggressive. But boy, the default that an awful lot of men settled into, especially after the ring's been on the finger for 3 or 4 years, is we become passive. We don't initiate. So we don't want to be aggressive most times, and we sure don't want to be passive, which is where a lot of us wind up couching out. We need to be assertive. Our family, our marriage needs us to be assertive and saying, you know what we're doing here is maybe not the best. It's not necessarily all bad, but it's not the best, and there is something better we could do. How can we start to move toward that? Can I initiate that here?
Yeah. Intentional. Like I had this mindset that when I closed the deal on this fine lady as a wife, that I kind of won the race, but it's only the beginning of the race, really.
So as we land the plane, this has been an awesome conversation, guys. And definitely, like we talked about, countercultural, and it really flies in the face of the pressure that we all feel as dads sometimes of putting our kids first, giving them opportunities. But let's just leave with that. Ask yourself and have the conversation with your spouse soon. Is your family a child-centric or marriage-centric? Are you following this biblical hierarchy that God's designed? Because if we follow that, I think the rest will follow and our kids will follow our lead. So until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit efmlife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.